Hello, folks. Hope everyone is well. So today, I thought, let me do a presentation on the Jaimini Karakas. Yeah, I'm basically going to give you an introduction to what all of the Jaimini Karakas are, and we're going to talk about each one of them. So it's a short presentation. It's basically a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share with you, and we're going to go over it together. Now, the thing is, I have actually made a course on, it's called Introduction to Jaimini, and it comprises of 4 different presentations, and therefore 4 videos. It can be purchased on my website. So here, essentially today, I'm actually giving you sort of like a snippet of that course, so you can sort of get a taste of it and understand what to, I mean, this is just the first layer. So we're just going to go over the basics. So let's get started. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to email us. Yeah. So let me share my screen with you, and we're going to look at this together. Okay. So here we are. Now, what is the term Garka? I mean, this is a very key term, actually, and it's used quite often in Jyotish, as you may know. Garka is every planet is a Garka for something, therefore a doer of something. Therefore, it's a significator of something. For instance, Jupiter. Jupiter is the Garka for children, for everybody. Right? So irrespective of where Jupiter sits in your chart, irrespective of what houses it rules in your chart, it is a Garaka for children, for everyone, the natural Garaka for children, for everyone. So as you can see, there's different type of Garakas, right? One is the natural, as we just said, or the Nisargika, instinctual. You don't have to, there's a feeling that, okay, this signifies this, like Venus. Oh, okay, there's a feeling that it signifies love and marriage. So that's the instinctual aspect of it. There's fixed or sthira. There's movable or jara. I'm going to talk about that. Now, natural karakas, they are associated with specific houses. For instance, for marriage, we look at the 7th house, right? Venus is the natural Karaka for marriage. So Venus representing the planet that is a significator for marriage. So any hard aspects to Venus is going to spoil the quality of marriage, regardless of how strong the 7th house is. Yeah. Sun, as you know, is father, right? So these are some of the non-live significations of the planets, as well as the live significations, right? So for the sun is father, for the moon is mother. Those are the live significations. And then there's the non-live significations. Moon is, of course, manas, which is mind. It is contentment. It's the natural ruler of the 4th house, which is what we look at for contentment and peace of mind and comforts. Sun is a father, soul, power, authority. Mars, of course, is brothers. Again, for everybody. Right? It doesn't matter if it doesn't rule that. In Nadi astrology, we look at Mars for husband also. Right? Mercury is uncles, relatives. Just generally your relatives from both sides of your family, mother and father. Jupiter, children, of course, husband for women. Venus is relationships. And by the way, relationships of all kinds, right? Because that's the 7th house. But of course, for a man, it's wife. For everybody, it's marriage. The quality of your marriage can be seen with Venus's position. in the chart? Is it sitting with a malefic? Is it aspected by malefics? See the D1, see the D9 for this. Saturn. It's not just servants, it's also like people that work under, like basically people that work underneath you. It's also underprivileged people. Saturn is a Karaka for underprivileged people. The common man. Rahu is, of course, desire and fear, because fear is actually the flip side of desire and vice versa. Like where there's a lot of desire, you can be sure that there's also a lot of fear. Whereas Ketu is moksha, as we know. It's letting go. It's disconnecting, it's detaching. That's the natural signification of these planets. And then there's a fixed Karakas. Right? So again, Jupiter, children. Venus, it's interesting. So in Nadi, we look at sun and both, like we also look at Venus for father. The logic behind it is that Venus is connected to semen. Yeah. And the same, like with mother, we look at moon and Mars. Mars, because the logic being that Mars is connected to blood. So between the two of them, you have to decide which one is representing the father and the mother. And one way you can do that is you can see like you can use the dashas as a guide. So for example, there's a death of the mother or the father, then like what was activated? Was sun activated when the father died, or was Venus? Like so you can also get a hint of your father's, got this, like was promoted to this great job. What was activated in your chart? Or your mother, like maybe she was in an accident. What was activated in your chart? Was it moon or Mars? That's kind of how you decide which one is the strongest of the two. The other way of deciding which is the strongest, representing that, is how they're situated in your chart. Like I can tell you, like in my chart, certainly Venus is stronger as a significator for father than the sun, because of the conjunctions and aspects to Venus, and because of how it played out during my Venus dasha with my father. Like, so I can understand that to be the case. So you look at the dasha sequence as a hint, but you also, of course, you look at the chart to understand. Mercury relatives, as I mentioned, that's fixed Karaka for Mercury, for everyone. Jupiter, children, obviously, Saturn, sun. Rahu, Ketu, grandparents. In fact, sometimes this question comes up. Rahu, Ketu is grandparents. I have found that Ketu is the maternal grandfather and the paternal grandmother. And Rahu is the paternal grandfather and the maternal grandmother. So see if that resonates with you in your chart. But this is what I found to be the case when I've sort of studied this and looked at charts. Yeah. So now let's talk about Jaimini's Karakas. I mean, this is what the presentation is all about. Jaimini, the word chara means moving or traveling. Now, before I get into this, just briefly to mention, what is Jaimini exactly? I mean, it is a sect of astrology. You could say like a tradition of astrology. Some say it's part of Parashara, which in a way it is, and some say it's outside of Parashara. how it goes is that Vyasa was basically the son of Parashara. Yes, Ved Vyasa was a son of Parashara. And Jaimini was one of Vyasa's disciples, one of his students. Okay. And it is said that Jaimini helped Vyasa classify the Vedas. According to me, there's an overlap, of course, with what you see in Parashara and what you see in Jaimini. The thing is, though, how the best way to look at it is that Jaimini is just an added layer of Parashara. So it doesn't mean that when you look at a chart, you disregard the Parashari principles. This is just an add-on. So for instance, you're looking at a chart and you are trying to determine some events, some life events, and you're looking at Vimshottri Dasha. Well, you look at Charadasha also, because that's going to give you additional information. It's an added layer, basically. Yes. So within the Jaimini framework, the Karakas that we're dealing with when we study Jaimini are called Karakas. Chara means moving. So the opposite of fixed, right? In other words, it's determined by specific planets in your chart. So that's what makes it personalized to your chart. It's no longer the fixed Karakas, which apply to everybody, right? Like Jupiter, children, Venus, relationship, Mercury, relatives. It's no longer the fixed ones, right? Sun, father, moon, mother. No, this is according to the degrees that a planet has traveled in your particular chart. It's very easy to calculate, right? Now, as you see, I have said 8 planets act as Karakas for different areas of life. There is a disagreement about this. So Rahu is taken by some astrologers, but some astrologers don't like to use Rahu as a Karaka because there are reasons why. So, for example, I'll give you one reason why some astrologers don't like to use Rahu as a Karaka. So, for example, the planet with the highest degree, which is called your Atma Karaka. The logic is that Atma meaning soul, Rahu cannot embody that. Rahu cannot represent that because Rahu doesn't have a soul, right? It's a shadow planet. It's not a physical planet. So how can it be an Atma Karaka, for instance? So many astrologers leave it out. I have tried, and I've looked at charts with both, including Rahu and excluding Rahu. And I find that Rahu actually works quite well. Maybe it's because we're in Kali Yuga and therefore it works quite well. So K.N. Rao doesn't take Rahu. He's quite clear about that. Sanjay Rath does use Rahu as a Karaka. So it's up to you to decide, actually. I mean, when I started my practice, I didn't take Rahu as a Karaka. But then when I started using it, I thought it made sense. Of course, Rahu is calculated in an opposite way, right? So it's not going to be the higher degree. It will be considered to be the lowest degree because it's always moving retrograde. But this rule doesn't apply to other retrograde planets. So, for example, in your chart, Jupiter is at 2 degrees, but it's retrograde. It's still just 2 degrees. But whereas if that Rahu is at 2 degrees, because Rahu is always retrograde, it's considered to be 28 degrees. If you understand what I mean there, yeah. Okay, so these are the Karakas. As I mentioned, Atma Karaka, planet with the highest degree. Amitya Karaka, which is the planet with the second highest degree, right? And then we go like lower and lower. So then there's a Pratri Karaka, Matri Karaka, Pitri Karaka, Putra Karaka, Natvi Karaka, Dara Karaka. Atma Karaka, the most important planet, the most important Karaka, I would say. Yes, it's the planet with the highest degree in your chart, right? So Atma means soul, it means spirit, it means the divinity of will, a divinity within. It's also the indicator of self. So some people look at the Atma Karaka as the same as, it embodies qualities of your personality, for example. Like, so it's sort of the equivalent of your Lagna Lord, right? Your ascendant is in Cancer, and therefore the moon is your Lagna Lord, your ruling planet. So let's say moon is your Atma Karaka, the planet with the highest degree in your chart, then it's going to function similar to the Lagna Lord, essentially. Yes. Or you have Mercury as your Atma Karaka. And that's just giving us one additional layer of information, right? You have Mercury as your Atma Karaka. But actually, your Lagna is Taurus. You're a Taurus rising. So Venus becomes your Lagna Lord. So those are two different planets. But we're getting additional information here, right? And we're also using the Atma Karaka in various other ways to get additional information about timing of events, what is happening, depending on where the Atma Karaka is situated. So similar to the Lagna Lord, all planets work in accordance with the Atma Karaka planet, right? It's said to like guide the other planets. And that's how we see the relationship with the other planets also, right? Like, for example, the Amitya Karaka, which is the second highest degree, is sort of reports to the Atma Karaka, in that way. Atma Karaka also transcends this lifetime. It's about doing the duty for the soul, fulfilling its purpose. Now, the dasha of the Atma Karaka planet is difficult. It's meant to be difficult. And it's going to be difficult in the ways, how will it be difficult? How will you experience the suffering? It depends on that planet, what it signifies. Like, for example, if your Atma Karaka is Venus, the suffering might be related to relationships when you go through the dasha of that planet of Venus. If it's Mars, it might be related to like disagreements and disputes. A lot of those may come into your life if it's Mars, for example. If it's Mercury, it could be a painful dasha connected to like something that occurs with your relatives, with your extended family members, with money issues could be there, communication issues could be problematic, that sort of thing. So what is the Amitya Karaka? Planet with the second highest degree in your chart. Amitya means living closer to or nearer, indicator of a courtier or a helper or an enabler. Basically, the companion or follower of the king. And the king, who is the king? The Atma Karaka. It acts as a supporter of the Atma Karaka. So for example, in your chart, if the Atma Karaka and Amitya Karaka are well placed from each other, they're supporting each other, right? They're entwined from each other. They have a 5-9 relationship in your chart. Even a 4-10 relationship is good. Difficult when it's 6-8 relationship between the two of them, or 2-12. But when it's a good relationship, then it's doing its job, which is facilitating the functioning of that Atma Karaka, of the Atma Karaka's goals and ambitions. It's helping the Atma Karaka achieve its ambitions. The other thing you have to see is what is the relationship with those two planets. Like if it's one, like your Atma Karaka is Mercury, Amitya Karaka is Mars, then it's a little bit difficult. There's a inherent disagreement, like there's an inherent disconnect, because those two planets, Mercury and Mars, don't see eye to eye. Yes. Conjunction or aspect of Atmakarka and Mithikarka creates a Raj Yoga in Jaimini. And when do you get the fruits of that? Well, when you're experiencing the Rashi Dasha of like where those planets are situated. Right? Here we're talking about Rashi Dashas. So for example, you're going through the Dasha of Sagittarius, and that's where your Atmakaraka is sitting. And your Amitya Karaka is sitting in Pisces. So that's great. That's gonna, be very helpful because there's an aspect between the two of them. So then is Bhratrikarka, the planet with the third highest degree. The word Bhratri itself means brothers or peers. Signifies confidence, courage, and basically shows the supporters in your life. Yeah. Then there's Matrikarka, the planet with the fourth highest degree. Matri means mother. And it's the karma that we bring into this life. So see what that is. I mean, is it a benefic planet? Is it well placed? Then that's going to give you a hint about your relationship with your mother. It's also going to give you a hint about relationship with housing matters, property matters, right? Because we're talking about fourth house. So it's the planet that nurtures us, sustains us emotionally. And of course, if it's not well placed or if it's a malefic, then this is where we can feel a lack in life. And because you're not being nurtured, so then you have to sort of nurture yourself in a way. And that actually, I talking to people, that it's not so uncommon where you didn't get that nurturing from your mother or your father, and you have to sort of nurture yourself. And then the planet with the fifth highest degree is Pitri Garga. Pitri means fathers, means ancestors. The planet that provides wisdom and knowledge, provides guidance. All the things that we associate with that word Pitri. Right? Because it's like fifth house is also your past karma, like your good karma. Putra Karaka with the sixth highest degree. Putra means son, but of course daughters, we take children. It can be students or disciples that you pass your knowledge on to, especially if you don't have children. I often see that this becomes collectively, your children become your people that are learning from you, right? It shows also the creativity, your creativity. It shows how your name gets carried forward. Like, for example, you publish a book. Your name is getting carried forward, right? And then the Natikaraka. This is a difficult one. This is, yes, it represents relatives, but it's also the equivalent of the sixth house significations, which is disputes, enemies, illnesses. Yeah. The Shadripus also, right? Anytime you have, when we talk about that inimical planet, but like this, like it's always sixth house stuff. So what are the Shadripus, right? They're like they're things like lust and greed, jealousy, intoxication, anger. And then finally, we have the Dharakarka. So Dara, of course, is the meaning for spouse. It also means break, gap, hole, cleft, right? It basically what that means is it suggests that marriage is leading you away from your spiritual path. It breaks your journey towards moksha. And then if you don't take that marriage path, you feel that there's a gap, a double-edged sword. So it's better to take the marriage path, no matter how long it lasts. You just go, take that path. It shows fulfillment. It shows despair. Relationships can also the planet with the lowest degree is where we're like it's naturally what we're seeking. Right? So see what that planet is. And if that planet is strong in your partner's chart, then that's a good indication that they're going to fill that void that you just intuitively feel because you don't feel like you don't have that thing, enough of that thing in your life. Yeah, and if it's a good partner, they can of course they can become the greatest supporter in your life path, in your life journey. So, Atma Karaka, why is it considered to be so important? It's the journey to yourself, right? It's the vehicle to where you kind of find yourself, who you really are. What are your weaknesses? It's going to show you that. The other thing I would say is that with these Karakas in your chart, we often get more than one planet sitting together, right? So when that happens, of course, the result is going to get modified. So for example, your Atma Karaka is sitting with Rahu. It's no longer just your Atma Karaka. You have to understand. You have to understand what is Rahu bringing into the equation. What Karaka is Rahu? Strong Atma Karaka shows a strong soul. It is also said that if it's a malefic Atma Karaka, it means a higher level of spiritual development already. I'm not so sure about that, but this is what I've been taught, and this is what I've read. Have I seen that to be true? Not necessarily, because I think in a way that it could be true is that when you go through the dasha of the Atma Karaka, it will throw a lot of tests, a lot of struggles, a lot of obstacles in your way, no doubt. It does bring suffering. And I suppose that if we can say that suffering is leading to purification, then yes, it is a higher level of spiritual development. Retrograde Atma Karaka means a deep-rooted desire. Again, it could be also a planet that's retrograde sitting right next to your Atma Karaka, right? So need to read it that way. So that's all for now. But yeah, so just another, I think I've announced this in my last video actually, but just another announcement, which is that there are 2 courses online. One is an introduction to Jyotish. This is for people who don't really know the basic concepts of Jyotish, like what are nakshatras, what are divisional charts, because I use the vocabulary. So this is very helpful for those who are learning or who don't really yet know the basics, the basic foundation. And then of course, there's another course, which is Introduction to Jaimini Astrology. So I talk about topics such as Jara Karakas, which is what we discussed, but actually this is just a small portion of that. I further elaborate on each of the Karakas. I also talk about sign aspects, special lagnas. I also look at a lot of example charts to predict certain life events and to show how Raj Yogas can operate in your chart. So if you're interested, you can simply go on my website and purchase the course, and you will receive the presentations, the videos. Yeah. So that's all for now, folks. Cheers. Take care.